Let's continue to reflect on the SANDF as it observes Armed Forces Day in Thohoyandou in Limpopo, looking at a number of issues, including what happened in eastern DRC, where 14 soldiers died in confrontation with armed rebel group M23. The subsequent withdrawal of South Africa's soldiers from the United Nations Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo is also under the spotlight. More recently, the president's announcement that the SANDF will be deployed to Gauteng, the Western and Eastern Cape to help law enforcement has also raised questions. Independent defense analyst Marais weighs in. A very good morning to you, Gwebis, and thank you so much for joining us. Maybe let's just perhaps start with what was one contentious issue here, being the budget for today's parade, from 370 million rands to what was revised to about 118 million rand. What were your thoughts on this reduction? And I mean, you asked the question at the expense of who, be it at the soldiers or those that are attending this event?
Well, yes, obviously everything is done, must be done within the provision of the funding, and all the priorities must be directed based on, first of all, what you need to be done, your highest priorities, and then what you can afford. Just to put that into context, to do the midlife upgrade of one submarine in total is about between 370 and 400 million rand. So in other words, with the 370 million rand initially earmarked for this, and remember, whether they've now spent the money or not, one will have to see afterwards, and then they have put that aside to basically do that. So they could have upgraded one submarine. To upgrade the midlife upgrades of a frigate, which we desperately need to patrol and protect our maritime domain, is about 750 to 800 million rand. So that's half of what they require for a total vessel that will be in service for at least 10 to 15 years. So it shows you the priorities. Also, if you look at the budget, remember, an Armed Forces Day, under normal circumstances of a defense force that can meet its constitutional mandate and is well-resourced, is a wonderful thing because it displays the capabilities, but it also gives an opportunity to build that civil-military relations. However, if you are not in a position to do that, and one must be honest, the fact that the Deputy Minister has also admitted that not all our hardware is on show there. That means that it's compromises, and it means that we do not properly showcase what we have. And remember, we must be in a position to showcase. So one would have thought that if it was properly planned well in advance, long before they decided on the 370 million rand, they could have, for instance, decided to have the Armed Forces Day in Pretoria, where it would have cost a hell of a lot less money than taking everything and everybody to Thohoyandou. That is a very expensive exercise, and it's a matter of priorities. Remember, we hear every day, and you hear every day, of the dilapidated state of the Defence Force, the decay in the support to our soldiers, even basic stuff like uniforms and shoes and tents and things like that, food, etc. Now, I mean, we have to decide, where do we start with our priorities? Do we want to showcase a shell of a defense force with equipment that is not serviceable or that cannot defend our country and its people? Or do we want to really equip our soldiers, motivate them that they are in a best possible position to defend South Africa? We know our borders are porous. We know that there are very bad things and serious things happen from the maritime side onto South African coast because we have no protection, or little or no protection there, and our airspace is also very, very vulnerable. We have to start there in terms of priorities, and not to have, fancy showcase stuff that we know that if we are called upon today Can those soldiers use those hardware and the equipment that they are showcasing there? One must be honest to say, no, they cannot. And that is the problem, that we are not serving the best interests of South Africans in terms of the constitutional mandate, and we don't serve the best interests of the soldiers that must eventually protect our country, and who are at the negative side of all the negative perceptions and things that people are saying about the Defence Force. Like now, I mean, they are being abused, as I sometimes use the wording of useful idiots, where they are now deployed against our own citizens, where they are not trained in urban warfare and urban containment of people. And that's a sad thing. It's also a reflection on the structural problems within the police. One must remember that the police has got a budget of at least 3 times that of the Defence Force, and many, many more men and women that is supposed to defend South Africans domestically, and not it is not supposed to be the Defence Force's task to do that. They do not have the training, they do not have the equipment, and with all due respect, I don't think they have the motivation to want to do that either.
Just on that point, Kwebesin, saying that they're not trained in urban warfare, what do you think would be the possible impact of then this deployment? Because what the president is trying to do is to ensure that organized crime that we're seeing growing in places such as the Western and the Eastern Cape, as well as the illegal mining, where we're seeing people coming in with equipment that really sometimes the SAPS is unable to go against. This then would help in making sure that we defer those types of crimes. So when you say they're not trained in urban warfare, what then would be the consequences of this deployment?
Well, one must remember that with this deployment, the soldiers have got no authority. They are working to assist the police. So they're not supposed to take over the role of the police and the work of the police. They can't, for instance, apprehend people. They cannot take them into custody. And so they are only there to provide, like, on the periphery for the police to do their work. You've referred to organized crime. They are so well organized that they know when the soldiers are deployed, and the soldiers have got limited powers and authority in those deployments. They use that and abuse that to their advantage. And in terms of their ability to organize crime, they also are withdrawing and basically recouping, and knowing that the Defence Force and the soldiers cannot and will not be deployed for a very long time. So they are still working on the background, and like we've seen, in 21 and 22, they just bounce back, and even in a much stronger way. So one must not look at a temporary measure only. If this temporary measure can result in a permanent resolution for the police to do their job and contain domestic threats, like from gangs and violence and zama-zamas and all that, if that can be done, then it can be a good thing. But there are no indication at this stage that any of that will happen, and this will be a temporary setback. The people, the citizens, might be pleased to see the soldiers, but they will also be very disappointed in the soldiers when they leave and everything returns back to so-called normal for organized crime. So this is not a sustainable strategy and a solution. There has to be a different way of approaching these problems, and it must be the structural problems that must be addressed. There must be political will and leadership will. And if so, then a division of the Defence Force must be changed into a home guard type of unit. But just to withdraw people from DRC and then deploy them in the streets is a dangerous thing. And this is not what soldiers also know. This is not what they are trained for. They don't work with soft targets. They don't work with ammunition to contain civilians. They work with sharp point ammunition where they identify a culprit or an adversary and they eliminate that adversary. So that is how they are trained. That is the conditions that they are returning from in the DRC, on the borders, in Mozambique. So that is a major problem, and it is not a solution. We need a solution, but somehow, government don't draw from experts that are available that can certainly assist them in developing a strategy. But it seems like, the egos are probably too high. And one must remember the ideological objectives of the leaders, both in politics, but also in the defense force, of such a nature that, that doesn't necessarily align with what is in the best interest of our citizens.
So, you mentioned the withdrawal of troops. This is from the United Nations Stabilization Mission in the DRC. And the Deputy Minister also spoke about this withdrawal and saying that they welcome it, and most importantly, the equipment that then would be brought back. Do you think this would assist in just bringing more boots and as well as resource back into the country for us to sort of recalibrate and realign?
Well, one must remember, if you look at the decay and the dilapidated state of the defense force, then one must remember of the plus minus 60,000 uniform members in the defense force, only about 20,000 are deployable anyway. We sit with an aging defense force of an average age of about 45 years old. I heard the Deputy Minister was talking about, new career paths for young people, but we don't have the funds to bring in young people. Ordinary soldiers, like infantry soldiers, are supposed to be, 22, 23, 24 years of age on average. Currently, it is already in the 30s that those young people are all supposed to be. So they are not young anymore. So they are not vibrant, and they're not, ready to go in there. So we need to restructure the defense force to bring down the average age, to have exit mechanism for people getting too old in a rank, and has got no potential to grow in their careers. And then we must bring in young people, but to promise young people and to have the so-called MSDS program, but there's a fight every year to see if there will be money for that, and sometimes it's only every second year that you do that. That doesn't bring down the average age of the soldiers in our defense force. So there are much bigger structural things that we have to address to have a much more fighting spirit and fighting ready defense force. Not wonderful days like today in the Armed Forces Day, where people are, only a few soldiers are there in beautiful uniforms. Fantastic. I respect them and I appreciate their service tremendously. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands others that know that we cannot defend South Africa as we stand today. And that is our primary objective. Our constitutional objective is to defend South Africa's integrity from outside our borders and to make sure that are no threats to our safety of our citizens. And that threat is coming from outside. That is our primary objectives. And currently, we are in no position to do that. So beautiful days like this is wonderful, but we are not in a normal circumstances. And this is wasting money with the greatest of respect. And that's one reason why National Treasury is reluctant to give more money to the Defence Force. Because their spending priorities is I don't want to use a strong word, but it is messed up.
All right. We were speaking a little earlier on in studio, who is joining us, Major General Sibang, and he was mentioning that in previous administrations, there was a lot of money being sent back to Treasury when the South African National Defence Force was seeing better days. And maybe that is the reason why Treasury had then cut down on some of the allocations to the SANDF, as opposed to now what we are seeing today when we actually do need some of those resources. What would you say with regards to the leadership and what really has led us to this point with regards to funding? And how would you implore government and just military leadership to conduct differently in order for us to make the turnaround that we need for the SANDF?
In my opinion, it starts with the political leadership. What kind of defence force do we need, do we want, and are we prepared to fund to protect our South Africa? One example, you know that Operation Pakisa is supposed to be a key government priority regarding the ocean economy and protection of the ocean economy. Do we have any resources to protect that Operation Pakisa and that strategy around Pakisa? No, nothing. So our resources, our marine resources, gets looted, gets abused without us having any capabilities to protect and support that side. That is supposed to be the role of the defence force. There is no ability, no capability to do that. We know what happened with abalone, with crayfish, with the smuggling of that. I mean, the other day there was an article where small harbours in the Southern Cape, like Still Bay, has been used to bring on board aboard drugs being smuggled and dropped off by vessels, by commercial vessels sailing around the Cape. Do we have any capabilities to identify and protect that? No, we do not have, and that is where we should start doing that, and we should seriously, hold accountable our political leadership. The unfortunate thing, and I will say this because I also has been a politician for many years. Unfortunately, politicians and the ANC in particular look and see which budget spending will bring them more votes. Now, spending on the defence force is not a vote-winning priority. They will rather spend on social services, they will spend on welfare, they will spend on education, they will spend on health, housing, etc., but not on defence force. Unfortunately, you also have a bureaucracy within National Treasury that we don't believe really appreciate the importance of an agile and a strong defence force protecting our sovereignty and our democracy. So they tend to sit and decide that no, this is not a priority, it should not be a priority. Like, I mean, someone high up in National Treasury apparently asked the other day, why do we need more money for the defence force? Are we afraid that Madagascar will attack us? Now, that is unacceptable of a high-level political leader not knowing the importance of a strong and an agile defence force to protect a constitutional democracy. Remember, a strong defence force. If you want to prevent war, you have to prepare for war. And a strong defence force is also a deterrent for anybody that wants to attack us or do us harm in any way of contraband, smuggling people, do us harm in any way, use us for the wrong reasons. So it's a combination of things, and then you don't have, in my opinion, strong enough operational and military leaders that can stand their ground and tell the commander-in-chief that we are not in a position to defend South Africa. I have asked the chief of the SANDF in the past in portfolio committee meetings. I asked him blatantly, sir, have you told the commander-in-chief that with the current budget we cannot defend South Africa? And his words was, no, he can't do that. He takes orders. If the commander-in-chief order him to do things, then they will do it come hell or high water. Now, that's a sign of poor leadership.
Well, speaking about leadership, we still have that unresolved tragedy of, a year ago, that incident that took place in the DRC where 14 members had died due to the lack of supplies and weapons. And we, at this point, still don't have an official inquiry over that matter. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, there's been many boards of inquiries, and depending on, obviously, the nature of the findings and the recommendations, they decide to classify that and not to make that public. I was personally involved in the Lady R saga, and there was a board of inquiry. I mean, that board of inquiry was not even seriously interested to talk to me about the evidence that I had. And they only approached me at the last minute, the day before the inquiry, the board of inquiry was to finish their work. And eventually, neither I or anybody in Parliament was afforded any opportunity to read through that report or to discuss that report. It was just said that it's classified, shrugged under the carpet. So I don't expect anything that will happen from that. And in terms of consequences, many ministers of defense has talked about consequence and consequence management. Unfortunately, in reality, little or nothing happens. We know what happened with the chief of the SANDF when he went to Iran and what he said there. And he was apparently, you know, had got a little knuckle on the fingers. And nothing happens after that. So even the tragedy with the submarine around the Cape, nothing happened, and you know, people have to take court action to get any answers whatsoever. So it is not an ideal situation, and you know, unfortunately, you know, people don't tend to respect and trust the Defence Force and government in this regard, unfortunately.
All right. Kobus Marais, independent defense analyst. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us this morning as we continue to commemorate the SANDF Armed Forces Day, the parade currently taking place in the Limpopo province as the Premier of the province makes her way in as those celebrations are about to get underway. We